think we're talking enough that we should put it in a podcast again. And then you got the camera, and here we are.
We were some fresh-faced boys.
Yes.
And
you didn't have the
more
curls.
hair on my beard and none of it on my head.
It felt like an adventure.
I can hear the music playing in my head.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this slightly delayed episode of The X Button. I am one of your hosts, Alejandro, and with me is the guy that recently got out of a shower and his hair is already clean.
Well, I would hope my hair is clean after a shower, frankly. Paul, hey, everybody.
So, Paul, so how's life?
It's been good the last 3 minutes since we talked.
Yeah, I know. So for people that don't know, Paul and I are recording this immediately after we just recorded our reaction to the Summer Gamefest for June 2022. And we just took a little pee break and water break. And then now we're just diving in just to talk about the thing we just saw. So before we dive into that, just a reminder that this is the X Button Podcast, our gaming podcast that usually posts every Wednesday from 2 p.m. onwards, God willing. Today on Thursday, just to accommodate this presentation. Available in the YouTube channel Escape Media, as well as most audio services around the world, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. You can find links in the RSS feed at anchor.fm/escape-media. If you enjoy our show, give us a like and subscribe. Usually this would be the section of the show where I ask Paul what he has been playing and what I have been playing. We're going to skip all that nonsense because since the last episode we recorded, not only did we just saw Summer Game Fest, we also had the Sony State of Play, which we're going to talk a little bit about after we go through everything that we just saw. So, Paul, before we go through the things that were announced, what do you think of Summer Game Fest?
Overall, I love it. It came in right at the needed time for E3 kind of dropping the ball several times in a row. And I'm just glad that we're getting to see so many games so close together without a lot of the BS that often is attributed to game shows like this. I just keep thinking of all the musical interludes and the really weird ads that get thrown around. That one video that we watched where that it kept cutting to this Jersey Shore guy and it was like, we got an after party, come on, hang out, bro. And I was like, what is going on? So just the fact that we don't have to deal with any of that is really nice. And we got quite a few really good games, a little something for everybody. I think it took a minute to get through the weird horror space area. But once we got past that, we had a little bit of something for everybody. So I'm looking forward to getting into it and talking about some of these things. Yeah,
I am torn about how I feel about this Summer Game Fest. I feel on paper, it's a really solid lineup of what he announced. Yeah. I think as a show, it was weirdly structured. It was weirdly paced, and it promised something early on that it didn't keep on for the rest of the show. And unfortunately, its big Megaton announcement leaked ahead of time. So overall, it's like I wouldn't say I loved it. I thought it was solid. I have been someone that had been looking at and had been watching so many E3 conferences throughout the years, and I still feel Keighley hasn't delivered anything like the very best super hype E3 conference that I've seen before. But I feel he eventually will get there. It's just that the format that he uses it's so even keel in the spacing that sometimes it's very rare for something to get the real pop that you think you want out of it. I'm gonna go on a hot take here. I thought the state of play was better. That also came in with the caveat that I went in with such low expectations because it was state of play.
That's a good point. But
I think still, even looking at some of the lineup that was also there, and considering it was just a 30-minute show condensed with what was there, obviously there were a few things that doubled from what we learned in that one, like just going ahead, like Street Fighter 6 and Callisto Protocol. Those were two games that were shown in the state of play. But overall, I still think that in a world where we still had no idea of what was coming for the rest of this year, I think I'll take what we can get. This was still a solid show. Maybe not something that I really loved, but I like some of the things we saw, and we're going to go through game by game and see what we're talking about. So to start us off, obviously, Keighley kicked us off with Street Fighter 6, which was officially announced earlier this year, and then Sony gave us a first taste of the game, and then he he gave us the first taste of one of the characters that's gonna be in this game. Guile, right? That's the name.
Yep.
That's the American hero, as he called it. So that it's a. I'm not much of a Street Fighter. I don't know much about Street Fighter.
I'll give you a quick rundown. The song that everyone associates to "This Song Goes With Everything" is Guile's theme, which is the original. Where that's from is he's the character associated with that. That's the anyway. He's like super over the top American, like military guy, big buff, crazy hair, ridiculousness, very like Top Gun, superhero style. And I know he was like a heavy grappler back in the day, and I don't know much about him outside of that. However, I know he's like a big classic character. So the fact that they're confirming him for this is just more confirmation for everybody that was wanting returning characters and not just new ones, because Luke and Jamie, who are the two on the cover of the game, are two. Jamie's new to this game. Luke was the last DLC character from Street Fighter V.
Makes sense.
So they're very focused on new stuff. However, the hip hop style is something from Street Fighter 3, I believe, or it's called Third Strike, I think. Specifically,
or Alpha Strike.
I think that was one of them, but Third Strike is the one that was like that version that was like the latest in the chronology of the Street Fighter series, because 4 and 5 like went back earlier on apparently. So this is the first one that takes place after all of the other Street Fighter games. So this is like a big return to form, stuff like that. So the hip hop influence is very much falling in line with that. So yeah, just the fact that they're showing Guile is really exciting for a lot of people.
Yeah,
right?
And I think I just keep seeing the game as like this style was something that I needed to warm up to, because it was so different coming from how Street Fighter 5 looked to how 6 looked with the more chunky dudes.
Especially with the way they showed it at first, with that very hard white, hard black Ryu and Luke. Now that they're showing the colors, it's way more clear how they're going with this, and I'm vibing with it now. Yeah,
I think I mentioned it in the stream. Like I was usually more of a Mortal Kombat guy, especially the later Mortal Kombats. How big their story modes were like my gateway in to be able to play those games, because I didn't stay playing them like in the competitive scene or just as something that I would go online and just keep on playing and getting better at. I would hope the Street Fighter game goes back to having some sort of story mode like 4 did, because 5 launched without one and then they patched one in that wasn't very good. So
they did confirm World Tour is going to be the story mode, which is going to be a created character going through and we believe learning moves from established characters. But you're going to be like going around, as we saw in the trailer, Metro City, and it's like a physical space. But then also there's going to be other modes to continue the storyline of each character. But yeah, it's kind of surprising that they're going that in depth with it.
Yeah, it's just like it was announced in the State of Play. This just has the 2023 year, so this is supposed to be the next Capcom thing for them. And the other game they announced that we're going to talk about when we talk about the State of Play from like that year. So even though Capcom's having a showcase this coming Monday, so I wonder if they're gonna just talk about all these games again, or if they're gonna announce other stuff. Because remember, we got the Nvidia leak that had a bunch of other Capcom stuff that they still haven't announced. So we'll see.
That's a good point.
The fighting community, I hope, takes to it, because I know Street Fighter lost a little bit of its cachet with 5. So the next game, we went to Aliens Dark Descent, a game that we didn't know how it really looked until we saw at the very, very end of that trailer that it looked like a top-down shooter. One thing I do appreciate about the Alien games is that if you look at the trajectory since like 2014, Aliens, obviously in 2013, the horrendous Aliens Colonial Marines, then we got Alien Isolation, that first-person horror like survival game, cat and mouse. Alien Fire, the Alien Fire Team game that came out last year, that was the co-op shooter, and now we got a top-down one. I'm glad that at least from game to game, there's like some difference there. What do you think of how this Aliens Dark Descent looked?
I mean, the cinematic looked fantastic, of course. I like the concept of it. I feel like the last step, the last evolution for Aliens as a game series can be an XCOM game. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I think that would be cool. Because we talked about there's barely any XCOM games.
Right.
And shout out to our friend Duncan. He mentioned also he wants more of that kind of XCOM games. So
Exactly. But yeah, I think that I like that they're branching out and there's not just one specific thing of like, oh, Aliens can only be this kind of game. And I'm glad that they're trying to do all this new stuff. We'll see what sticks. I mean, obviously, Alien Isolation was a huge hit. Fireteam Elite was kind of okay received, but didn't really do much in the whole grand scheme of things. I feel like this is going to be interesting, top down, but also squad based. I don't know if that's going to be like an AI that you're controlling, or like the squad is your group, or if you're one guy and it's like co-op with some others. Because
that seems ripe for co-op. I mean, considering Aliens Fireteam was a co-op game, I would be shocked if this next game they are not doing co-op, because it feels like they're leaning towards that.
There's been a lot of focus with co-op with Aliens, because you see the second movie and it's like all about the squad, the crew, and I don't know why everybody kind of latches onto that side of it, because if there's one thing Alien is also known about, it is a single very strong character, which granted we got an Alien Isolation, but everyone always talks about the squad, the Marines, who are like parodies of other things that are supposed to die in terrible ways. So that's a side note, but I think I'm curious about it, but a little skeptical as well.
Yeah, coming in 2023 also, so no defined date there. So the next two games is kind of what I hope the rest of the show could be, because it was promising to give us what old E3s used to give us, extended looks at gameplay. The first one of those was Callisto Protocol, a game that got its trailer at the State of Play, and then we got what Keighley mentioned, it was the Schofield cut, giving a little jab there at the Snyder Bros. Of a trailer that was a little bit more gory, because this game is like straight from the Dead Space creator and has very Dead Space vibes to the T. This extended gameplay look sold me even more on this game. That something I was like, yeah, wait, I haven't had the Dead, because I never really finished Dead Space 3, so the last full experience I had in that kind of game was Dead Space 2. We know how long ago that game was, and Dead Space 2 was excellent. Man, what do you think of this gameplay? It's
same as you. I was not completely sold, maybe a little less than you were, but this definitely made me want to get it, because it was really just broken up pieces for trailers and stuff. So I'm like, I don't know if this is really going to be the right vibe, because like you can make anything look good for a couple seconds, especially horror, which is so hard to achieve, and like the very specific environment that Dead Space can achieve, that terror where like everything around you is a threat. It really looks like they got it finally. The gameplay, the gunplay, the movement, the stomp, that's very Dead Space is coming back. The very human and terrifying enemies, the jump ins from like holograms to like do the fake jump scares.
The crunchy feeling,
that hand cannon that you have, the gravity ability to like pull moves, pull enemies and throw them into environments, which I hope becomes, I don't know, like it didn't look like it actually used ammo. So it was kind of like, because I mean it was stasis in the original Dead Space,
and you had like a little meter,
right? But you still had to use it to like revive it, but I didn't see like any meter for that, so I wonder if that's going to be on like a cooldown or something. Either way, I just love that idea of it.
And you're getting stuck at that like fan.
Oh, the death scenes are back.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that look of terror on the character's face getting pulled into this industrial fan as an enemy hits him into it was terrifying, and haunting in all the best ways. So I'm sold on this. I'm really excited for it. I love the look of his Space Marine armor, and I hope that there continues to be more of them, because that was one thing that I didn't expect out of the original Dead Spaces.
All the different suits that you can get.
Yeah, and like outfits and colors, which, as you know, I have a huge soft spot for.
Yeah, for like different outfits.
I don't know if you noticed.
Yes.
I love dressing.
I'm so basic when it comes to outfits. I just stick with one. I don't care about like having different outfits, but I appreciate when the option's there. So this is still slated for December 2nd, 2022. I just want to remind people that in recent years, any game that's slated for December gets a delay. I would pray to God that this game at least hits it. The last game that really hit it, like especially if there's some December games that hit, we have had both Halo Infinite and Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk was a complete utter disaster when it launched there because it was like an exit ramp and with them wanting to release it that year. And then Halo Infinite managed to hit. At the time, we liked it. We know where things have gone after that, but this is a single player game, the kind that I really like. I hope it makes it. And the next game that we also got an extended gameplay showcase for was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, who revealed its trailer yesterday from when we're recording. Shout out to them having a Mexican character named Alejandro. Obviously, I'm not Mexican, but I'm Latino, so them using my name, it's like Game of the Year 2022 already. I'm just kidding. But Modern Warfare 2019 is like, I understand. I've said many times in the show that I have a little bit of qualms with this campaign. With like its story, sometimes its lack of spectacle. Loved when it went quiet. I didn't like when that game went loud because it didn't feel as epic. This feels like it's correcting a few of the things that I wanted out of that game, and it looks so damn impressive because it's now it's a game made with the next gen consoles in mind, even though it's still a PS4 and Xbox One game somehow. I want to see how that thing looks in the all hardware. But what do you think of this demo?
I am going to try to hold in my excitement somewhat because I don't want to sound like a Call of Duty bro.
Mm-hmm.
Because normally I'm not huge on Call of Duty, but of course, like all people around our ages, we played Modern Warfare 1 and 2 in 2007 and 9, was it?
Mm-hmm.
And my gosh, that changed my life, I think. So the fact that we're getting to revisit all of this, those characters, a lot of these environments, the gameplay, the unbroken gameplay segment, as we all saw, was on an oil rig leading into a tanker segment, kind of just merging two of the best missions from
the first two Modern Warfare games, huh?
And of course, the mechanics for Modern Warfare 2019 are full swing. The sounds of the guns changing from inside to outside, the rain coming
just
off the
little
roof.
details that just add to
Just
the
like
ambience.
they even talked about how they had an entire water simulation. It's really funny because I even mentioned it in the, during the process of it.
Yeah.
Seeing the return of Soap and all of the other characters as well, just all of that coming
And
together.
not only that, not just the water animation and quality, but also the physics that it gave that boat section that Uncharted 3 quality of when you were in that boat set piece where everything was like moving around,
sliding back and forth. I'm sure it's going to get so frustrating on hard difficulties. You're going to get killed by like the cargo boxes and such. But gosh, it just looks and plays fantastically, and I'm definitely sold on it. The way
and at least like we know that Call of Duty is a reliable thing, that they, no matter what, Activision does everything to make sure a game hits. And after Black Ops Cold War, that was okay because I liked its campaign, and Vanguard that wasn't. And Vanguard that I really didn't like. Especially in Vanguard being released in the middle of all the nonsense that was happening in Activision. Now like this Modern Warfare releasing while most of that thing's been taken care of, and Microsoft is like now getting ready to swoop in and clean house. It's like I feel a little better heading into Call of Duty, especially now there's like the bittersweet feeling that this is finally the last game of its era before that acquisition is completed and moving away from annualization. So I'm more excited
about it. The next one that comes out probably won't even be for PS4 next month.
It will.
Is it? Okay.
No. Sorry. I thought you were gonna say like they were gonna be exclusive. No, the next one will not. It's finally gonna. Yeah. We're finally reaching the point like Callisto Protocol is next gen only. There were a couple of next gen only games that were here, and some of the things that they've shown. There's still some games that are
some of the ones on PC are gonna go next gen only.
Yeah, it's like some of the PC only games that we saw are definitely gonna be next gen only based on the quality. But by 2024, I think we're gonna kick finally the Xbox One and the PS4 to the curb. Right now, I understand why some are still holding on, but there's some others that are finally realizing, let's just move on. So this is the first time that I can say I'm excited for a Call of Duty again, like heading into it instead of just coming. So hope we get the beta soon. So Flashback 2 is like this game that Geoff Keighley said that he played like 30 years ago on PC. I had no idea what that is, and I saw it and it looked fine. It says it's coming out in winter 2022. You have something to say about this? Nope.
And I just mentioned the 30 years ago, the way games were and the way games are now. I wish I could have seen a little bit more of the like untouched gameplay of what the original one looked like.
Yeah.
Just
I wish they had also said maybe they could have release their remaster for like the consoles of the first game, so people actually have context for this one.
I know a lot of the like legal side of it gets really muddy with games that are that old, because some of the places either don't exist anymore or they try to hold on to IPs for ludicrous amounts of money or something. It's really weird because like they're not even video game companies anymore. So anyway, I'm glad that this is happening, and for anybody that loved it back then, I'm sure they'll love it now. But there's a part of me that likes to see new things from really old IPs like that. So that's about all I have for that. I do have some things to say about the next one.
Oh yeah. So Witchfire. So Keighley made a mention that this is a game that he actually unveiled at the Game Awards of 2017. I have not much. I've seen many Game Awards. I had no recollection of this game, but the way this looked, I was by. It's like this shooter with medieval powers, and it's gonna be an early access, just PC. So
if they took that one character from the Vox Machina show, who's all about guns, and just like put him into a D&D campaign by himself with all of the weaponry, and it all operated like really smooth, buttery Doom Eternal style. That's basically what this game would be. And my goodness, it looked awesome. It felt awesome to like kind of see it move around. It's such a cool concept that I wish would get touched on a little bit more. People get really tied up with this whole, all right, medieval has to be like these specific things. You can't use things after this set year, and it either is that or it has to be completely fantasy with a lot of extra fantasy BS that some people don't want to deal with. So I like this whole like, yeah, there's medieval stuff, there's demons and monsters, and you're like the Doomslayer, but it's in the medieval times. So it's like, sign me up.
Yeah, it feels like just to give an idea, like the only shooter we've got in like medieval times recently was Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and that was like in this more cartoony way. So this is the kind of shooter we don't really get. So look cool. I'll pay attention when it's like on console. This definitely looks like whenever it reaches console, it's gonna be an Xbox Series X and PS5 game. So
definitely.
Fort Solis. This is like this Steam game that was announced that it's also horror vibes, but not much. But it feels like more like a mystery thing. To me, the most notable thing of this is the fact that it got both Troy Baker and Roger Clark, two famous voice actors, especially Roger Clark, big name after Red Dead 2. Yes. Like he really got its stardom elevated thanks to that game, and getting to hear his voice again just like reminded me, it's like, man, Red Dead.
I just wanted to find some kind of pet animal and just go, "You're all right, boy."
Yes. Yeah, his voice is so powerful, and that trailer looked cool. But you have anything to say about that other than the voice actors? Because I can't say much.
The vibe I get from it is they spent all of their budget on the actors, and I'm worried that it's not going to actually be much. I know Troy has a bad habit of embellishing things because he gets genuinely so excited about a project.
He gets so caught up.
He was like, it's very intimate and it's close, and I was like, all right, so it's going to be very small scope. There's going to be like moving around, probably a lot of dialogue. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of horror action blend to kind of get you through that. Otherwise, it's just going to be a walking sim, and I'm worried about that.
I would say the few of what we saw of it visually, it being made on Unreal Engine 5, it looked good. It's just that I don't know if this is the kind of game I would like, and it also goes into the fact of the pacing of the show, putting so many space horror games all together was kind of like blending everything together. Like this other one that completely scary, Routine. That was like a game that apparently got re-revealed after almost 10 years. And it's not like a robot. I want to go
back and find this because I'm very curious. But it kind of reminds me of another Troy Baker game, Soma, where that was all about
he's also in Soma.
Yeah. Which that's what at first I was like, oh, Fort Solis. It's like Soma, but a little more of the space and less of the underwater side of it. And then Routine came in, and I was like, oh, so it's like Soma, but 70s. Or at least 70s Art Deco in space, which I would say is much better. And out of the like 5 or 6 different horror space games that we saw in the first 30 minutes of this showing. I would say Fort Solace was the lowest, and Routine was probably one of the highest, if not the highest, I think. Because, I mean, no, Callisto Protocol is still the highest, so Routine's like a second. But I would love to see like some real unbroken gameplay of that, because it was so smooth that I was worried that it was pre-rendered. And I said it on the stream. I was like, oh gosh, they're doing like almost live action with like adding in the texture assets.
Yeah.
But
now, if I remember correctly, I think Routine is gonna be like an Xbox only game, right? I think
you're right. And it was gonna be Game Pass.
Yeah, because there's another game later on that's also just on Xbox that's also on Game Pass. Considering they, I'm so excited to see their showcases, because there's gonna be 2 of them on Sunday and on Tuesday. I want to see how they fill out their year after the Starfield and Redfall delayed. I think this is a good way to plug and think for them. So I don't know about it. Routine didn't have a year, but whenever it comes out, we'll see. Then I think we went through a little bit of like some weird stuff in the middle, and then we got the Outriders Wordslayers reveal, the expansion for Outriders, the surprise looter shooter hit from last year, and one that I was very shocked at how much I really enjoyed it, especially later in the year with the New Horizons expansion, and you started playing it a little bit. I always said that Outriders,
I got like halfway through the game, I think.
Yeah, before you hit like a wall. Yeah. And I think you committed the mistake of sticking with your world tier instead of lowering it just to keep on going. I think you need it.
I struggle to understand like the language of a game that devs say, where it's like, oh yeah, if you hit a wall you can just lower the difficulty, but then you get worse gear. So I was like, well, I don't want worse gear. I don't want. And
that's the thing, it's not that you get worse gear, it's just that the higher level you jump into better gear harder. But
now that I understand that, I could have more easily lowered the difficulty again, but it was definitely like there was a point where I couldn't touch some of these enemies.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I always, I'm glad they're expanding, because I always said that I appreciated that Outriders build itself as not a live service. So it was a game that I like, that it's like the kind of content drops that you come in for the content drops and leave after you're done. You're not have to kind of stick with it. So I always said, it's whenever they have the expansion, I'm coming back. June 30, the next expansion. I'll see what the price is, but I'm totally down to go back to that, especially we're heading into another dry spell of a summer, technically. So then we have Stormgate, which people are like, with not Lara Croft, with its not Ghost, with its StarCraft.
That was such a weird bait and switch kind of style. It was like, oh, architecture with like sci-fi elements, and then we find the shield, and then there's demons, and then it cuts finally into explaining that, oh yeah, it's an RTS, and that person has nothing to do with the story. I hate when games do that personally, but that's like kind of a nitpick. So overall, the screenshots they showed were kind of cool looking. I will give them that. Unreal Engine 5, I think, again. It looks clean. It looks well built, and the people that are building it are ex-Blizzard people that did StarCraft. So for that whole kind of team that loves that kind of game, I'm sure they're going to tear this one up.
I'm glad that they're able to do a game without the dark cloud of what's happening with Blizzard currently.
Amen to that. I don't know. Everybody who's wanting to buy stuff doesn't have to worry about, well, is my money going to a really terrible corporation?
And this is free to play also. So if there's something that I appreciate about free to play, and also like something like Game Pass, and also the PlayStation Collection we're getting soon next week, is just the idea, because it's free, you at least can try something that may not appeal to you that you can buy. So I'll try this, because I've said it before, like when an RTS hits for me, it can hit like Age of Mythologies for me. So I wouldn't mind like another one clicking. So then we got High Water. This was like the first super colorful game of this show. It also had to come
probably one of the most depressing ones.
Yeah, because it's talking about like an apocalypse happening by climate change, which is like
like at least the world ended on a sunny day, and I was like, oh god. Oh no.
Yeah, that game only stood out for me because of the color, because it was like an early stretch of because even other than Street Fighter starting us right out of the gate with something colorful with the fighting, it was like an extended look of just dark and dreary things. Weird way to pace our show, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely would have spread out some of these in a different direction. Because as it stands, we had like a lot of really heavy hitters at the beginning, and then a string of like 10 different games that all were like either unheard of or ones that might not be as interesting, you know? So, I mean, it's nice. High water, I'm sure it's going to be really good for the indie crowd, but it wasn't really my thing. But we'll see. I mean, all we really saw was a little bit of boat gameplay and some characters walking. So, like, I'd love to see what the gameplay loop really is. It looked like there were some enemies with weapons, so maybe there's like stealth elements and gathering like a crew or something with management. I don't know. So, I guess we'll just see whenever it comes out, because it's this year. The Sonic keeps popping up.
If you're on video, you'll see like in my upper corner here, I have a Sonic toy that just keeps like blasting through my green screen. So I just found it funny.
What if you ever added like a jump scare noise every time it showed up? It's like, bah, bah,
yeah, that'd be funny.
Oh, it would take you forever to edit that, but it would be very funny.
Yeah. But then anyway, we got American Arcadia, which is like, this one stood out for me again just because of the change of the change of style we got from what we had before. And it wouldn't seem like the kind of game that I would like, but I like looking at it. And you mentioned how it's like, it feels like people really fell in love in that look aesthetic of the VRA or whatever that thing was called there in that
TVA,
show. TVA,
which I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying that only because of Loki. That's just certainly the biggest media piece that used that Art Deco style, but it's lately been really coming back, and for good reason. It's very
and also like we were chatting I think it was a day or two ago, how much I have fallen out of love with Deathloop, but I have to say that's also its aesthetic. It's that. So
very stylish. I love it. So
I don't think it had a date because I didn't write it out, but
not that I know of. Probably next year if I had to guess, but I'm once again, another one that I'm kind of curious on how it actually is going to play. But it was a 2D side-scrolling platform, which is very different from everything else we've seen in this show so far. So
yes,
it's got.
And speaking of different, and speaking of also different, that it was the kind of laugh I absolutely needed at that moment. Like Goat Simulator 3 and doing their trailer, basically making you baiting and switching you. With it being like, because we heard rumors that Dead Island 2 was apparently back in the menu and apparently going to be released, because that has been like vaporware for so long. But man, it's like then recreating that trailer and using goats instead of the zombies, perfect. And it's coming this fall. It's not a specific date, but Goat Simulator is not something I play, but it's something I love watching.
I've watched friends somehow. Somebody was able to put Goat Simulator on an Xbox at my youth group back in the day, and watching all the kids go ballistic over all the goats nonsense was really funny. But
it's just that safe comedy game that everyone can play. It's not like
the same thing as Gary's Mod back in the day. It was like that thing that you did just to really goof around with no worries about reality. And it's really funny to think about how Goat Simulator really broke into the meme side, because at first it was like, yeah, it's goats and you just kind of pretend to be a goat and it's funny. And then it was so broken that they just like fully embraced the meaning. And I'm all for it. It's not really my thing, but I'm so glad it exists. And like you said, that trailer gave me a good belly laugh.
Yes, and you can see the laugh in the playback of our reacts whenever it goes live. So Marvel's Midnight Suns. This was the game that Keighley unveiled at Opening Night Live, and then IGN did the first gameplay reveal for it. I had seen on Twitter that there was going to be more gameplay on this, so I felt like I was bait and switch there. It was just a new trailer that gave us they confirmed that Venom and Spider-Man are going to be there, because they were not in the original, like in the original reveal trailer, which made me think it was like, oh, maybe it's a Sony thing that they can have Spider-Man here, but Spider-Man was there. It's voiced by Yuri Lowenthal, who is now like, it's become clear he's going to be voicing Spider-Man in any game that pops up now.
At least
and the aesthetic is still something that I'm really digging. I'm still want to see more of the game and how much like it really adapts into a supernatural aspect of things. So coming October 7th. So being part of Spooktober, it's I think it's fitting. And anything to say about that?
This was like the reigniting of my fears that like after Outriders, Stormgate, Highwater, American Arcadia, and Goat Simulator, I was like, all right, these are all right, but these aren't really my thing. And Midnight Suns showed up, and even though we didn't really get gameplay, the fact that Spider-Man and Venom showed up and they both look fantastic. Actually, that's almost true. Venom looks just like the symbiote Wolverine from Web of Shadows back in the day.
Yeah.
And that gave me a good chuckle. But I just want to see how it plays. I think there was a little bit of gameplay shown, but I want to see like it seems to be.
I've seen how it looks because that's the thing. I've seen how the gameplay looks because IGN did the deep dive back on September 1st of last year. So go back and look at that.
I'd seen like clips of it, but I want to understand.
Remember that happened when you were sheltered in place by our Hurricane Ida, so I have no idea if you ever went back to that. So
I went back to parts of it. I didn't go back to the original one. I saw like clips of it. And it was just like there's a card system or something that's instituted in it. So I just want to understand it better. But it's just such a cool concept that I really, really want to like it. That's where I'm at.
At least we got to release it. This was a March game and it got punted. So
true.
Again, it's like we're finally filling up the slots for the fall, even if it's still not looking like a very I'm gonna say this. It wasn't like a big one, like you would have expected, considering how 2022 came in roaring like a lion. It's going out like a lamb. So, Cuphead and the Delicious Last Course. This one is just, to me, it's just hilarious how long it's taken a DLC to come out for a game that came out in 2017 and then DLC announced in 2018. But to be fair to them, the animation style of this game, they have said it before, it's incredibly effing hard to do because it's all hand drawn. Everything they do,
and it's very smooth. So it's like most animation is done on 12 frames per second, or at the max 24.
Yeah, and then they overimpose it to 60 frames.
Yeah, this is probably like raw 60 or something, which is ridiculous. Oh, I can't even think the raw work that goes into this.
Yeah, and I think to me, it's always Cuphead. It's always that hilarious dichotomy of a game that it's so amazing to look at and it's just so attractive for you to just see it and so incredibly hard to play, but it's like it fits that old school 2D itch of like the super hard games that you conquered. Like conquering Cuphead back in 2017 was like a great achievement for me, and looking at this is like, it's still, I remember like seeing so much is happening on screen that I'm gonna get lost, but I enjoy it so much. I can't wait to play it. Also June 30th and Outriders there. At the very least, it's like something for the empty summer. But also, funny enough, in this point, we were like filling up some gaps for this summer because then Neon White, the game for Switch and PC, that was like these demons that were like transported to heaven, and it's like a first-person shooter with cards. Something got data for June 16.
Yeah.
So that looked cool.
I don't have much to say about it outside of the fact that it's somehow another blending of visual novel and action. This one being first-person shooter, but very like Nintendo Switch FPS look to it, where it's geometry and not a lot else, but it still looks decent enough. So I'm kind of like impressed with whatever I am seeing, even though it's not gonna be
and just to kind of keep in with the same like release date, because this was shown later in the show,
right,
they also like showed TMNT Shredder's Revenge, a game that looks so freaking good, and got the surprise announced that it's also coming in June 16th, and if you're on Xbox, it's on Game Pass. So, and they announced that it's like Casey Jones is going to be in this game, which of course he's going to be in, but now it's like a confirmation you get with the four Turtles, Casey Jones and April O'Neil, in a 6-player co-op game that's both local and online. So
yeah, that is unheard of nowadays. Oh, it feels like it's a act of God to find a game that's even 4 players,
local
couch co-op. So yeah, I guess it would have to at least be 4 people sitting on a couch and then 2 people. Online,
also what makes me, something that makes me excited, because do you remember the X-Men arcade game?
I do, yeah.
That was a 6-player co-op game back then.
Gosh, this does well.
Yeah, it might, especially now with Marvel being more open about like, if people want to work on stuff, come talk to us and we'll make things happen. Imagine if then the same people that are doing it, because the TMNT game from back then and the X-Men, they're all cut from the same cloth. That same arcade brawler. That'd be great if they were maybe able to then go to X-Men. Because I know the X-Men are due for a revival. So moving on.
Lately, they've been doing that with the X-Men, so this might be the time for it.
Yeah, especially because now Disney is not shying away from X-Men anymore since they bought Fox. So because remember, they were not touching the X-Men because they were so adamant and not wanting to give anything that could point them to Fox.
Up in Marvel vs. Capcom
Infinite. Yeah. Ruining that game because that Wolverine is like a big mainstay for that series. So can you believe there's not being another Marvel vs. Capcom since that's so sad that it was just Infinite.
We'll hope for something coming next. I mean, once Capcom's done with Street Fighter, maybe they'll move on to the next Marvel vs.
What
Capcom.
if they say something at the Capcom showcase? That's my thing. Is like, why would they do a showcase if they recently just talk about some big games now?
I think they're just going to go in depth with stuff they've already announced. I don't even think
that'd be lame, but
it would. But I could see them doing it.
They were that lame last year. They exactly did that. So we'll see. So Midnight Fight Express. This is one that we saw before. Still looks cool. That kind of top-down brawler, they're weird and shooting everything. That was only done by one father, he said. So this is coming on August 23rd. So 7 days after my birthday, at least. It's also coming out the same day as whatchamacallit, as Saints Row. So which we're gonna talk about later. So it's funny to see it that way. Then anything to say about that one?
Just I love the idea of it. It looks a little rough, but I mean it's made by one person, so I'm not really surprised. It's got the heart though, which that's what I'm really hoping will be the case.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then we would follow that up with Warframe, the Duviri Paradox, which was basically like a tease of what Digital Extremes is gonna reveal at TennoCon pretty soon.
Yeah.
Obviously, like Warframe deserves its flowers as one of like kind of next to Destiny, one of those games that didn't launch well, but has like kept this community going and the game going for so long and improved over time. And the people that are into Warframe are super into Warframe, and Warframe has always been something that the idea of it, I wanted to get into it just as like a Destiny alternative, because I always talk about always liking that one game that we can always go back to over and over when we're not in the mood to play anything else. But this one will always seem so nigh on impenetrable with how much there is. So,
it's dense,
and if you think Destiny is bad with its density, I think Warframe is worse. But for the people that really love Warframe, I think it's like something new for a game that's been going for 9 years. So
it's impressive. There was like a launch, well, technically PC first, but then a launch title on PS4, and it is nigh unrecognizable nowadays.
Yeah, because it was bad. It was bad when it was like the launch title back in 2013.
You had like two variations of spaceships that would you'd run through hallways of, and you couldn't really see outside anyway. But man, the stuff that they added eventually, I couldn't even begin to list it all. Yeah. So
then we went into the fan service section that had games like Honkai Star Rail, Senseless Zone Zero, and then other games like Super People and Humankind. I honestly have nothing to say about any of these games. What about you?
Not much. Honkai Star Rail and Zenless Zone Zero are basically the same game with different coats of paint. Both same people that made Genshin Impact, so that tells you all you really need to know about them. And that's about it for that. Super People, it was a CG cutscene that looked like it was going to be a mobile game, so I don't really have anything good to say about that one. And Humankind
had all the Latino it started with all the Latino cultures, and then with the announcement that it was coming on console. So
that was probably the most substantial one out of all of that. I forgot Humankind even existed. It's basically just Civilization under a different name. So good for them that they are doing well enough to get a whole DLC about an entire culture, several of them. And that's about it for that one.
I would agree with that. Moving on. I think this was this is one that you actually liked. One Piece Odyssey, coming 2022. Basically, an RPG in the vein of Dragon Quest, but in the One Piece universe. I said it in the stream. It's like there's something about anime that I like. I'm not like an avid anime watcher. In fact, like it usually takes me so long to try to get into one, and then the ones that I get into, especially later, because I used
the worst.
Yeah, and especially I used to watch a bunch of anime back when I was younger, and trying to go back to it, I just come back to the worst ones, or that has moments that just completely turn me off forever. I know One Piece is like in that same vein as like Naruto, of like this very long running thing that people really enjoy, and I feel this is the kind of game that can get someone interested into the anime.
This might be a good, I mean, I wouldn't say starting point yet because I don't know enough about it, but it seems like it's far enough removed from the actual plot of One Piece that it's not trying to do the same problem that every other anime game is, where it just tries to summarize the events of the anime up until that point, and it usually causes it to be really bloated and really messy. I mean, just looking at, I tried to revisit the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm games, and it is hard to even touch any of the early ones with a 20-foot pole, because it is just menus after menus, text descriptions of the plot and whatever else. But One Piece Odyssey is trying to do something different, basically, because it's trying to tell its own story in like kind of a completely different method. So it's not like a Dynasty Warriors game, which most of the One Piece games have been up until now. And it's trying to be more like a Dragon Quest, which is perfect for this kind of story, because as I was saying on the stream, One Piece is very long form world building and story.
Doesn't it have like 1,000 episodes?
1,050 chapters, and I think about 1,000 episodes just recently as well. A lot of those episodes are bloated as heck, and it's not good to watch the anime anymore right now because of that reason. But the chapters themselves are super stupidly dense, and there are at least 1,050 of them. And there's a lot that goes on in it. So like the fact that they even want to try attempting that with this is, I say go for it, and it's gonna probably do better than the others if people can deal with the combat.
Yeah, I feel our friend PJ is gonna be all over it. Just it looking like a Dragon Quest game, and him being a huge proponent of the One Piece anime, I would imagine he would love this. So let's hope it's good. Then they showed Souls Hackers 2, a game that they announced earlier this year, a sequel to apparently Souls Hackers, obviously. That the big notable thing for me when I saw this announced was that it was an Atlas game that was coming day one to Xbox, next to also PlayStation, because Atlas has just disdained the Xbox system from giving them like games like Persona 5, like the Persona 5 Strikers or any of that kind of game. So what they showed here was just basically giving us the English dub. What I saw was, again, fan servicey. So it was, I kept saying in our reaction, fan service, fan service, fan service.
The funniest thing is that was barely fan service.
I know. I was just
like the threshold of anime. But yeah, I mean, it was.
I've seen the ultimate fan service with the Berserk movie. So
I mean, I don't even know if I would call that fan service. That was just trauma.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was really like, for this though, with Souls Hackers, it was all cinematics and no gameplay again. So it doesn't really mean anything to me, especially for anime games, because they always look cool, and then you sit down and play it, and it is not fun half the time. I tried sitting down with Scarlet Nexus, and I got through the prologue, and I had to put it down because it was a fun game to play in the moment, and like the 15-minute slog to get to the next segment where I could actually play the game was just not it for me. So they need to make that easier, but I hope that Souls Hackers 2 has some stuff going on.
Yeah, and then we were reminded about the Capcom Arcade Stadium that has all the cool arcade games for Capcom. I didn't catch a date for that. I think it was just an ad. But then like we moved into another kind of ad that also gave us a release date and a demo for Metal Hellsinger, which is a game that, like bullets per minute, as Scale Up was putting it on Twitter, it's like it synergizes his gameplay with his soundtrack. And you were talking, and are you seeing the puppy, or are you looking at
He just knocked his water bowl over.
Oh no.
So I'm like, son of a gun.
You'll have to claim that. But yeah, like Metal Hellsinger, we're talking about, you were vibing about some of the song. You recognize some of the music there.
Yeah. And it's really cool, the concept of it, because that's basically what everybody wants to do already, is they go through some really heavy shooter.
What's funny is that Metal Hellsinger and Witchfire are the two games that look so similar, but Witchfire looked like that super next gen style of game.
Yeah.
And Metal Hellsinger looked like a more indie stuff, but this is out on September 15, and there's a demo out now. So I'm gonna go download that demo after we're done recording, just to kind of see if it's fun, because I did buy it to some of those rock songs then.
It was nice, and I love the concept of it. I just wish it was under like a bigger budget, but hey, maybe if this does well, then we'll see more of it in the future.
Yeah. And then we were shown another trailer for The Quarry, the new game by Supermassive Games, the guys that made Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures anthology games, which you recently played House of Ashes. And I'm still waiting for I almost bit the bullet for all three of them in the sale, and I just want to wait for the trilogy sale. Don't know why. But The Quarry, because it feels like it's them finally going back to a higher budget for that kind of game. The animation work in this thing was impressive. This is something that, it slipped by me that it comes out tomorrow. So it's something that I would really like to play, especially right now since we haven't had like a new thing to play recently. So we'll talk about that in behind the scenes if we're gonna do our arrangement to get that, because it's a $70 game. So yeah, and then we were showed anything about The Quarry for you?
Not really. I don't even know if I want to get it, because I'm not as big on the campy side of horror. I didn't really care as much for Until Dawn, even as a concept. And I think the only reason that House of Ashes worked for me is because the premise is very removed from that campy side of it, and it takes itself very seriously. So I think that's why I enjoyed that a lot more. So I don't know if it's going to be for me.
It's reviewing well, so we'll see.
At least it looks great.
So yeah, and then we got Nightingale. That survival horror, that survival game that also has FPS elements and fantasy. That's done by some people that used to work at BioWare. This game was originally revealed at Game Awards last year, and to me, it's like I'm like you mentioned it also in that stream, that games with survival elements you tend to be such a huge turnoff, and it's just in very few games that actually works for me. Like I managed to make it work in Red Dead, because Red Dead Redemption 2 has survival elements.
It does. It's like very minor, to the point that you can almost ignore them.
No, you can't ignore them, because then you start missing shots, and the movement starts getting messed up. So.
Well, let me clarify. The amount of work you have to do to get yourself back into it, I feel like
it's very minimal.
Minor.
Yeah. It's just an annoyance. It's just like a slight annoyance.
Yeah.
Now I have to eat. I have to feed the horse. I have to feed myself to fix my dead eye.
Right.
And all that. And to me, it's just the fact that this game got Tencent got its hands on this game. So it's like, I'm very iffy with like Tencent backed games. So then we got Saints Row, the game that I mentioned that it's also coming on August 23rd next to the Midnight Fight Express. The big thing about this was reconfirming the date and announcing that there's a demo out now that you can create custom create characters that you can use in the main story, and you can even use photos of any kind of person that you can create there.
I don't know if that used like the photo, or they just had that person for reference to say that it's so detailed that you can make your own person. But gosh, it looked really detailed, and I love detailed character creation.
Yeah, and I just know, I mentioned it jokingly, there's gonna be an idiot that's gonna make a Donald Trump like character, and there's gonna people are gonna be putting it there.
They put a lot of effort into saying you can create literally anyone, and then just let people kind of go with that. And so they're going to be like, we didn't tell them to make these things, but they're just going to be like the crazy nonsense of Donald Trump mows down thousands of people, or anything else. I'm
already like I'm bracing myself for those headlines that are gonna happen in a few months.
Oh man, that's gonna be another video games cause violence, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, but then I feel the world is ready for this kind of game again. We haven't had because
a little bit of silliness.
Yeah, because it's like GTA has been dormant, and that's just putting it in quote unquote, because obviously GTA Online has just been the thing for many years, but there hasn't been a new GTA. It's just been the same game that's been existing since 2013, updated twice for PS4 and PS5 and Xbox One and the Series X. So, and Saints Row has been also dormant since 2013, because we can ignore God Out of Hell, but it's like the last release thing was Saints Row 4 in 2013. Yeah. So it's time. So Warhammer 40,000 Dark Tide coming in September 13, 2022. There's been many Dark Warhammer 40k games that have also made it to Game Pass. That's why I tried one, and I also tried one through PS Now one time. This one in particular got an Xbox exclusivity window for Xbox and PC and Game Pass. So what do you think of this one?
Overall, it looked really cool. I loved the style of it. It looks really polished. I want to see if it's actually designed to be like a co-op shooter, or if it's like a storyline that you get to play. And I think I mentioned that on the stream, but I love the variations of weaponry, the melee weapons, the absolute carnage you can wreak with, there was like the chainsaw sword, there was the giant hammer, and like you hit this dude in the spine and he just folded over in half. That was just really cool to look at. And I love like the weird, dark, visceral sci-fi of Warhammer 40k anyway. And I was saying it on the stream that I really want to explore some of the games that they've made. So whenever this finally shows up, I might pick it up. And between this, they have a classic RPG coming out, and the Space Marine 2. So it's like, it feels like they got a lot of stuff in the pipeline, and I'm excited.
Yes, so good for the Xbox people. Let's see how soon before this hits PlayStation. But like I mentioned earlier, and also on other shows, it's like with Xbox losing Starfield and Redfall, they need stuff to make people in those systems feel excited about like what's rest for this year. And even if it's not what they would have wanted, it's at least them doing something to give them for. Remember, there's the whole thing is like they're on Xbox because they want to subscribe to Game Pass also, unless you're also on PC. So they gotta feed that beast. So even if it's not with their games, at least it's with some games. So Layers of Fear 3, it's actually a Layers of Fears for some reason. This one's coming out in early 2023 by Bluebird Team. So I was interested to see if the Bluebird Team was listed for Summer Game Fest, because there was also that rumor that they are remaking Silent Hill 2. And especially because those images leaked and Konami like DMCA strike them, that's when you know that they were real. But instead of, once again, another Geoff Keighley show, also but with no mention of Silent Hill this time, compared to the Game Awards that was mentioned twice. Comes and goes.
He tried to do something right as he was introducing it. He said, get a dose of this, because they were
overdose.
Overdose. So I was like, mentioning that, I was like, look at you, little tongue in cheek and all that. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned it on the stream. I did not play any of them, but they seem good. Yeah,
they're divisive. I mentioned to you, they were not well reviewed, but there are some people that really stand behind these games. So, and this one has the advantage that now it has better tech behind it with Unreal Engine 5.
It looks gorgeous.
And it makes me think that if Silent Hill 2 is actually being worked by these guys, if they're also building it on Unreal Engine 5, Unreal Engine 5 is definitely proven itself to be a looker. So it's like, it's early 2023. So in another show, probably by Keighley, he's gonna give us the date. So then we got Gotham Knights. Not quite a new gameplay trailer. Like, we got that 13-minute thing we saw a month ago.
There wasn't really a lot shown at all in this.
Yeah, it was just a way for me to make this game look cooler compared to like how that gameplay so undersold this game for us in a way. Despite being very excited for it and giving us different looks for Nightwing. I always laugh because I know what I have done with Nightwing to our friend Zach. how I tortured him. So hopefully he watches our live stream reaction.
I'm sure he will, as usual, not appreciate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to know that there's going to be confirmed different outfits, but I'm worried that it's just going to be like a couple here and there, and
for all 4 characters.
Yeah, and I don't really care as much for like, not care, but I don't have a lot of knowledge about Nightwing's outfits and stuff, so maybe like Robin's might look more interesting.
Yeah, Nightwing has like different looking outfits. I would hope that they get the red one, that he something worse.
That's true. That was like New 52, I think, that he switched it over. I might be wrong on that one. We would need Zach for that. Yeah, I forget which that was.
He's the Boy Wonder expert there.
Red Hood is definitely the one with the most variations that I would love to see, because he's got a lot of really cool looks.
But I would agree with that. And then the show ended with a lot of The Last of Us. So Neil Druckmann came on stage to talk with Geoff Keighley. So the first thing that they talked about was that we have heard that Naughty Dog had been working on a multiplayer game based on The Last of Us universe for a while, because The Last of Us Part 2 originally had a version of Factions planned to release, because the original version of Last of Us came with that multiplayer, which was really good. Everyone was shocked how good it was. And then people were very disappointed that Part 2 were not going to have that, but because the campaign side of that game grew so big that they were like, yeah, well, let's just focus on the campaign. But then they were like, don't worry, like we were still trying on multiplayer and we're going to do something about it. But it turns out that it became its own game now. They announced that in 2023, we're going to learn a little bit more about this Last of Us multiplayer, that if you saw the screen that they shared, it's in San Francisco, a place that we haven't been in The Last of Us. It's gonna have it's gonna have like a story. So it's now going beyond just a deathmatch game that 4v4 deathmatch game that defined that Factions multiplayer in Last of Us 1. So what do you think of that? Like this multiplayer big title.
I had this one friend that swore by The Last of Us multiplayer for so long, and I was like, what did that even have any, like, that doesn't seem interesting as like a concept. And then I watched it one day, and how the whole idea was merging the actual gameplay with the metagame of like getting the food to feed your settlement and stuff.
Yeah, and if you connect
and
if you connected it to your Facebook account, it would pull in names of your friends from Facebook, and make them and it could be like if you feed someone, it would be like person XYZ, like a real friend of yours, you fed them, or they died because you failed to failed to stop the invasion. It had a really nice meta game that just kept you playing. So
so that's what I realized was the real draw for it, because you always wanted to continue on. But anyway, so I was really unfair probably and very harsh on it at the time.
No, that's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm just gonna put you on blast. I don't understand what you have about The Last of Us. Every time you talk about it, you try so hard to like downplay anything about it, and I don't understand why.
So I'll at least talk for this specific example as to why, because they have been talking about the multiplayer for so long, just removing it from The Last of Us completely. The idea that they've been talking about it and promising it and saying that it's going to be this thing and it's coming for free with this already packaged game. And then they're like, no, but we got more ambitious. And to me, that always sounds like, no, that means you didn't know your limits and you just decided to do things that you didn't need to. Because as we've seen, Cyberpunk and all of those other games that always claim the word ambition always end up biting off more than they can chew. And I'm dealing with that with somebody who is currently making his own game, and he keeps getting way more ambitious and invested in what he wants than what he can do. And I feel like every time a company does that, they kind of are they're just stringing people along and asking for good favor until they can finally bring it out. So yeah, I'm sure it's going to end up being way cooler than what we have seen in the past.
And you know what has happened to them before when they had something that they were planning on doing, they got overly ambitious?
Well,
Uncharted The Lost Legacy.
Right? Yeah. And
that was great. So
it was, and I know I am admitting that I can eat crow, especially for the next thing that we're going to talk about when it's in my hands and I see it. But as somebody who's seen the business side of when people talk about ambition and always trying to like, just wait for us. We don't have something to show yet, but we promise we're working really hard, everybody. And I'm like, that's such crap. And I get it, you're working on it, but you can put aside a little something to show people. And besides one single piece of concept art, which was done probably 3 years ago.
Yeah, this is them officially announcing it as its own game instead of just a mode.
So. And I know it's like, it's worth it and it's going to be its own thing. It's going to be fantastic. But I always just hate that whole side of stringing people along like that. So maybe it is a bit of a personal thing, but yeah, that's what I don't like. And even like when Neil Druckmann was up there and they're like, what you got to show us? And he's like, we don't have anything yet. And I'm like, Lord. So that was just like, oh, okay, get off the stage, buddy. But then tying it to Last of Us, I still don't like the way that Neil himself handled a lot of that. It was very arrogant in the way he kind of acts sometimes, which granted, if I wrote something and people constantly criticized me for it, I'd probably be arrogant too a little bit. But I mean,
he has the most awarded game of all time, so it's like,
oh, I get it. I'm just like, it's the same problem like I had said earlier. More people saw it and therefore it was going to get more media coverage and therefore more people would it's the same problem with the Oscars. It's like, it's not whatever is actually better, it's whatever's the most publicized. And I think that's kind of the problem as to why it's the most awarded game, is because that's the one everyone had heard of and that's the one everyone
but that's the thing. Remember you're rewarding something that people like. You just don't award something just because. So
I agree, but that's not up to the people deciding it. They might honestly do that because that's literally what happens with the Oscars, and we've confirmed that. So what's to stop the Game Awards from doing the same thing? Because only part of it is.
It wasn't just the Game Awards that rewarded Game of the Year. It was a million different outlets.
That's what I'm saying. Is all of those places have the same problem. People are hearing Last of Us 2, it's in your face. It's a sales tactic. As long as they are in your face enough in front of you, you're more likely to use that or choose it when you have an option.
I 100% disagree. In a year that gave you Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, and all of that, it's like, these were rewarded because a lot of people, the people that rewarded really liked it. So
I think some people did, but yeah. I don't
think
many
people did.
I think that there's parts of it that were good, and I don't think it earned all of those awards. So that's all we have to say about it.
Yeah, but then he gave an update on top of the multiplayer about the Last of Us TV show that's been working on HBO for HBO and HBO Max. That he's working with the Chernobyl creator Craig Mason, where both of them have directed episodes, and you don't like get as bigger seal of approval that this thing is like being given the TLC that it needs than giving it to Craig Mason, who gave Chernobyl probably one of the more high quality things that HBO has ever done. And that's saying a lot considering Game of Thrones eventually, before it went down the crapper, it used to be that. And him being like the creator of this thing, being on top of like what the story is going to be. And then confirming they're adding Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker into the show, which adds to the actor to play Tommy, that they're playing roles that are not quite the roles that they were playing, but they're just the actors from the game being part of the show, kind of like it's a wink and a nod.
Yeah.
And I think that's cool. And the image that they show that it's from the museum scene when you're escaping Pennsylvania is like, there's going to be parts of that first game. And speaking of that first game, they finally announced the remake that we've talked about since we restarted this show back in 2021. Last of Us Now Part 1. And releasing on September 2nd, 2022. This was supposed to be the big bomb that got leaked literally 2 hours before the show.
It's such a shame that happened, because I'm sure getting to see that raw without having any knowledge beforehand probably would have been way cooler. Mm-hmm. But I guess it was nice to kind of temper that, where I was like, okay, well, this is what I'm expecting to be the big reveal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially as we kept going, it's like, oh yeah. They're like, when I saw the time, I was like, And I knew that this was going to be in the show because Keighley gave the shrug emoji when that thing leaked by PS Direct. That's when I knew. I was like, yeah, is this going to be the closer? Because I haven't seen it yet. Because we were like hoping something like God of War Ragnarok could be like the closer. But when I saw The Last of Us wasn't revealed yet, that's when I knew that it was happening. And when we saw the trailer, at first you were like, yeah, this looks similar to how it looked. It behooved them to have done what they did, was showing how it looks in remaster and how it looks. You can't deny, like, there's some people saying that they don't see the difference. You're out of your mind if you don't see the difference between how it looked in 2013 and this.
Like, in the character model. First of all, I want to clarify.
No, I'm not talking about you. I saw some people online.
Some of us people don't see things right. I know you're not talking about me with this, but I can admit, especially unless they had shown the comparison of them next to each other, I would have been like, I don't know, this looks just about the same.
Yeah, that's
what
the thing.
They should have
done
is showed some of the gameplay that was really clunky in the original, and they said they remastered all of that. So, I mean, oh gosh, if we see part 1 with the gameplay of part 2, no question, this is going to be fantastic.
No, and that's the thing. Like, it was just more people saying that they saw the next to each other, say they didn't see the difference. I was like, that I call a lot of BS in that kind of people, because it's like it's hard to see both. Yeah, how you can see both side to side and not see the difference. That they did put the work.
Yeah. It definitely looks more detailed for sure.
Yeah, even if you can debate that maybe other games deserve remakes more than this one, at least you know that it's not looking exactly the same. And
it doesn't.
I'm just more interested for them to eventually do that state of play deep dive to give us the gameplay enhancements, because that's what I always said, that it would be cool for the better story. Even though I love Last of Us Part 2, I agree Part 1 story is better, to be merged with the objectively better gameplay of that first game, of that second game.
So if they can merge that just the right way, which if they're doing ground up rebuild, then it should merge perfectly. So that'll probably be my favorite game then for a little bit.
Exactly, yeah.
It's a strong storyline.
Oh yes, and I'm glad it's just as soon, September 2nd. So we're literally less than 2.5 months away. Yeah. So it's coming. So now my big fear, because now we can go to that, is like I'm sad that God of War wasn't in here, because there was that BGC report that said that apparently some European sources told this website called Game Reactor that apparently God of War Ragnarok is actually delayed out of 2023, despite all signs pointing that it's not. But then Jason Schreier went to Reset Era, that gaming forum where a lot of people like tend to leak stuff there, and he likes to like sometimes interact with some leakers there. He went and posted there. He says that you really can't confirm like a negative, but he has talked with people. He has sources that they would know that they had not heard anything about that 2023 things, and he talked to 2 of those sources. So it's like it not showing up here. Now I can see some people being fearful that it's slipping. As of right now, if you go to the Sony Santa Monica Twitter, it still states 2022. So the problem right now is that where else could they reveal if it's coming out this year? Yeah, I can't imagine, because remember, like I mentioned it in the show, like the original God of War 2018 had its date revealed with a 3-month lead time. It's like it was in January 2018 when they gave us the date in a random PlayStation blog post with a trailer, with like a launch trailer.
They might do it again.
Yeah, but when is the question? And now I'm like, don't expect that reveal anytime soon, because they're gonna push this Last of Us Part 1 remake now.
they're gonna advertise the crap out of that, but maybe they just wanted to make sure they didn't step on the Last of Us's toes, because if they ended it with God of War, nobody's gonna be talking about Last of Us. They'll only be talking about God of War. So
yeah, and apparently they really want to sell this remake for some reason. So
they know they really have to advertise it for people, because a lot of people are going to be like, wait, didn't I just play that?
Oh yes. But with them announcing that 10 million people bought Last of Us Part 2 in 2 years, obviously there's other exclusive from PlayStation that have sold more because they're a little bit more mainstream, but you can't sneeze at a 10 million copies sold in less than 2 years. So
that's a good amount of money.
Exactly. So overall, that was the Summer Game Fest. It's like, again, it's like when you look at it all listed like this, it's solid.
It is.
at the same time, it's like, and then I think about the pacing is over, and I like the big megatons at the end or something like it's strong to end, and I'm like, yeah, it's like if they hadn't leaked, it probably would have been stronger. At least I know that they finally confirmed the multiplayer game. They're gonna absolutely talk about it next year. I assume around the time the show goes live. We got this remake that we can finally get it done with in September, and then.
Also left a better impression if they hadn't revealed the Modern Warfare 2 gameplay already, and this was it.
No, because it's Call of Duty. I wouldn't say Call of Duty is like your big showstopper.
It wouldn't have been like a shocker, but the fact that this is where you're gonna see the gameplay.
I know that was good because remember I said like early on the promise that they were actually gonna give us meaty gameplay. We only got that twice.
The Unbroken gameplay was great, but the fact that we had already seen the trailer beforehand, I don't know. I feel like it kind of took some of the air out, but even though it was great. But then everything else, it was like either CG or there's just not enough information about it. And there's just a lot of that kind of going back and forth over and over again. And then once again, just like the first 5 things shown were horror space genre.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
so it's like a weird pacing. Yeah,
So
that's why I said like if we were have to grade this was like a complete 7 out of 10 show. It was
great material and not good execution.
Yeah, and it's sad that if you're looking for like that big megaton that it leaked beforehand. So
yeah,
I will say though that this was like just thrown out there. This basically confirmed Naughty Dog's next game also when they say like that Neil Druckmann was directing it. So they got a lot of things in the pipeline. So, and one of my friends that went to college, his name is Drew Wilson. He's working in QA in part 1. He is texting me. So just throwing out there. Yeah, it's
that's cool.
The interest. He's been working QA in Naughty Dog for a while. He QA'd part 2. He QA'd Uncharted Legacy of Thieves, and now he's QAing this one. So. That was this summer Gamefest, Paul. However, last week, exactly a week ago, the State of Play happened. A State of Play that, as we were heading into it, I was like,
the whole thing we could have an entire episode about by itself.
Yeah, but I feel it's like we don't need to like spend too much. Like kind of like similar to this, but I'll still say this. Like, I was poo-pooing that State of Play going in because we had just gotten so many bad State of Plays that didn't live up to the promise of the early ones. Because I went back and looked. Last of Us Part 2 was revealed at a State of Play next to gameplay of Modern Warfare 2019 and other stuff. So the 2019 State of Plays that also revealed Final Fantasy VII Remake, they had something, and then after 2020 happened, everything went out the crapper. So because they also started doing the showcases, so the showcases were the good ones, not the State of Plays. But yeah, so this one I was like going with as little low expectations as possible, and I was so happy to see that my expectations were wildly exceeded. And we can just go through this real quick, just kind of like how we did this. So that State of Play started with Resident Evil 4 Remake. And what's funny is that it started with like guitars and a big R. People thought it was gonna be Last of Us Remake. They were like, because they said there was not gonna be first party stuff there, and they bait and switch people with Resident Evil 4 Remake. That thing looked fantastic.
It looks so good. At the time I was like, okay, this is a lot happening very quickly. I'm not seeing a lot of it because it was like the quick jumps between environments and different things like that, trying to figure out who's what. Quick shots of Ada, barely seeing Leon. But I want to see how it plays. But I mean, obviously, it's probably just going to be like 2, but with
and 3 and 7 and 8 because they're all built in the same engine.
Well, okay, so 7 and 8 obviously play very different, but I think like 2. I was watching somebody explain it. They were like, "All right, it's going to be just 2, but with like the gameplay changes of like Leon's competency, but not like the crazy backflips or anything." Because I think they've been trying to still keep it pretty grounded overall. So I mean,
and 4 was when
fine.
And the thing is that Resident Evil 4 is when Resident Evil jumped the shark. It became like more fantastical, more like augmented. And the good thing is that for people that are purists, you know what the best part is? That original version of RE4 is still available. You can play that right now. And I play that every year.
They already remastered it.
Yeah, it was a remastered. I mean, obviously it looks old, but gameplay wise, like if you meet that game with its expectations, that game is still great.
Yeah, because it's still solid mechanics, and the updates didn't break it.
Exactly. And so it will be cool to have both versions now available now in modern times. So it's like the remake is going to be there, but it's definitely going to have a different pace and a different look and feel. And it's not being directed by the same director, but I can't wait because that looks fantastic. And it's coming out on March 24th, 2023. So it's like
the first addition to the Bloodbath of next year.
Yes, not just for, there's many more.
Well,
so
another edition.
And that game is also including PSVR 2 support, which they immediately follow up with Resident Evil Village PSVR 2 version. And that one, I'm curious to see if it's just an update into the game, because Resident Evil 7, you didn't need to buy a VR. You didn't need to buy a VR version of that game. It was just the game. You put on the PSVR and the mode will enable, and you put it on. So it'll be funny.
It's going to be the same thing.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear the heat mapping of how many people die at Castle Dimitrescu.
It's going to be a lot of very specifically interested people playing that game.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's going to... Their productivity.
Getting choked by a giant vampire giantess in first person is going to awaken a lot of things in a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. And then they followed that up with showing another zombie game, like at least something the same way with Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, like a new content. Obviously, Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, very popular VR game and like Oculus and others. So I think you can play that game in normal PSVR. This is like new content that's going to be for PSVR 2. That looked fine. You've never played us.
I'm glad it's in New Orleans. Turn up.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really recognize anything specifically interesting down there, so it's just random French buildings and neon signs, and they're calling it New Orleans. But we'll see, because they didn't really show too much out of the gameplay.
Yeah,
anyway.
But I know that it's very beloved in the VR community. So considering Walking Dead to me has fallen so out of vogue for so long, especially since the end of the Telltale series, which was my favorite version of that story. It's cool for people who are going to invest in VR. Same with No Man's Sky VR, which there is VR mode for No Man's Sky right now. I'm just glad that there's going to be better version of that VR mode with the PSVR 2. So, yes. And you have enjoyed a lot of No Man's Sky recently, and there's a new update also. So No Man's Sky, the gift that keeps on giving. Then Horizon Call of the Mountain. This was the VR game that was revealed when PSVR 2 was named earlier this year at CES. And they gave us a little bit more detail. And I am appreciating the improvements this new VR is going to bring into PlayStation, because I always said that PSVR was very underpowered. Many games looked smudgy. And for them to look as smooth as they needed to look for VR, they needed to like downgrade the quality. I saw so much detail that reminded me a lot of Forbidden West. And being able to have that on VR and being able to do like bow and arrow combat in VR, for people who are going to invest in that, I think that's a good way to interact with Horizon, especially in a non-open world environment. That's how we've interacted with the first two games. And they gave us the update that's finally going to make me reinstall that game when I'm done playing Assassin's Creed right currently, with the New Game Plus and Transmog, and being able to rechange you'll be able to respec depending on how you've been like powering up your Aloy and all that. So that's cool. And Marvel Spider-Man coming to PC, the next big game that's finally moving over to PC. I cannot wait to see how what the mod community is gonna do to Spider-Man. Can you imagine? Yeah.
I didn't even think of that. Oh gosh, they're gonna be oh, there's going to be so many things. I mean, like there's already so many variations of the outfit that are silly and awesome. So just adding that into it is going to be even better.
You know what I'm going to love? There's going to be someone that's going to be able to mod that game in its entirety, so that every character is like resembles the same Raimi movies. They're going to like mod Willem Dafoe in, they're going to mod in Alfred Molina, they're gonna mod in Tobey Maguire. They're gonna mod in Kirsten
pizza
Dunst.
theme is gonna show up.
Yes, I feel like that game is gonna be damn huge on PC, and I'm glad, because more people need to play the greatest superhero games ever. Because they announced Spider-Man Remastered, but then confirmed that Miles Morales was also gonna be coming to PC, also a month or two later than Remastered, and that was on the heels of those games combined selling 33 million copies. They've extracted everything they can out of the console version, so this is the time to put them on PC now. things print money.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then we moved to Stray, the cat game, the stealth cat game that they originally unveiled back in June 2020.
Yeah.
This one, I at least now have more of an idea of how the gameplay looks. And the thing that makes me more excited about is not much of the game, but the fact that when it comes out, if you're in the new tiers for PlayStation Plus, at least the $15 tier, it's day one game.
Free.
So it's like, this is what you need. It's like, if you're not going to put your exclusives, put these kinds of games there.
Yeah.
Make these kinds of games discoverable.
Give me a reason to buy it.
Exactly. And then obviously the first version of the Callisto Protocol trailer, we saw it here. Then we saw the gorier version at the Keighley show. It was cool to see this here because it's like, what I love more about this state of play is that it's finally giving, if it's not giving you exclusives for Sony, it's at least giving you the kind of third-party games you want to see in this kind of thing. So it was really cool to see Callisto Protocol there and getting the December 2nd release date there that got reconfirmed at Keighley show. Hopefully it gets there. Then we saw the roller drone game that looks like Sable. That is like that shooter, that arena combat shooter that's radio in that style. Not my thing, but really cool to see.
It's neat and it moves really smooth, which is more I can say for that than Sable. But,
especially if you're playing Sable on Xbox One, that game's unplayable. So.
Which I always feel like I'm committing some kind of atrocity by saying anything bad about Sable, because the people that I sometimes watch on YouTube like swear by that game.
But that's the thing. I think if they're playing it on PC and Xbox Series X, not Xbox One, I played and then Eternites. This was the Weeb game that included in this state of play. This was interesting because this was a Devil May Cry style combat game mixed with a dating sim that even had like this amazing still of hold R2 to hold hands.
Yeah, that was really funny.
Yeah, the new press X for respects.
The concept's really interesting because I know a lot of the best dating sims and virtual novels, or visual novels I meant, have those elements in them, but they're so primarily the dating sim side of it, so few people even try it.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that they're trying to put forward more of the, hey, there's a lot of action, there's exciting stuff in here, check it out. And then there's also really deep emotional connections with 2D art of characters. So that sounds like I'm taking a dig at it, but I know a lot of people really love that style of it, and that's where you get some of the strongest like romantic writing there is.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, power to him. Redesign the main character because he looks like a complete tool.
Mm-hmm.
He's just got a white t-shirt on and black pants. This is anime, guys.
Yeah.
Come on, step the game up.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I think it was 2023 this one's coming out, if I remember correctly.
Probably so.
Yeah, but it at least looked interesting. It's an interesting combination. That action game with like the more dating sims, because dating sims tend to be just exclusively that sometimes, or if not part of role-playing games like Persona. So Street Fighter 6, that's where we saw most of the game. Obviously at Keighley's show we only saw one of the character, but here we saw the world area that feels like it's like them trying to put Final Fight, another Capcom series, into a modern game in Street Fighter on top of just the normal Street Fighter stuff. And coming in 2023, glad we got to see that there. And then before the final thing we saw this game called Season, that like very stylistic game that I learned that apparently IGN did a report last year that the developer was a real POS. Like it was like
really?
it was treating the developers badly, and they had to like quit or went on like a protest or something like that. I was reading that, but it was like I didn't want to dig in too much because also the people that like reporting that stuff like love have an axe to grind into the gaming industry and trying to find that stuff. So it still didn't look like I think we said it in our stream when we were watching it. This is the kind of game that I know there's some people are gonna absolutely devour its uniqueness and style. It's just not for me, but I'm glad it was put here to kind of give that variety. And the final thing that ended this thing, which when I learned you watched it at 480p, I wanted to like tear my hair out that you didn't see it in a proper way. Final Fantasy 16. We finally got to see more of this game since we last saw it at September 2020. Because you were like, the UI looks bad. When you see an UI like that, and 480p looks bad.
It looked terrible. And I was like, what am I looking at? This is horrible. I mean, like, moments of it look great, but I don't want to get on any soapboxes because I'm sure you're going to try grilling me anyway.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a good way to end it, especially after something like Season, which I thought admittedly was probably the worst looking game
of everything. Yeah,
absolutely. And then jumping into something as epic and grand as that, the music being crazy. What are you doing anyway?
Yeah.
I have this weird thing where I'm not as really into the summons for Final Fantasy in any of them.
Yeah, which is crazy because when I went in to see reactions from people, everyone was into the idea of the game focused on the summons.
Which is crazy, and I'm like, what? That was the thing? Because I rarely ever used the summons in any of the Final Fantasy games I used.
I use them all the time.
Well, you see, that was my problem. Is I wouldn't think they were as useful to it because it's gonna sound so dumb. They were boring. Because it wasn't my characters that I cared about. It was they were like, all right, go do a thing, and then I had to sit there for 60 seconds to 90 seconds while this same cutscene played over and over again. And I was so disinterested in watching that constantly that I just wouldn't bother with it. Like Yuna in Final Fantasy X was the least used character of my bunch because I just didn't care about her fighting style, which was all about summoning something to fight for you. And I was like, I don't care. I want to fight myself. And that was like my motivation for all of it. And like even Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII, the summons are usually super rare, so I almost never saw them anyway. Final Fantasy 13, almost never used them. Final Fantasy
cannot
15,
believe it. Yeah,
I saw them like maybe twice in Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah, 15 because there was no way to summon because it was random.
Right.
To summon them in 15, it was random.
And then Kingdom Hearts, I would go through the entire games never summoning anything because it would take the same resource as magic, and I enjoyed using magic more. So I would just use the magic instead of the summon. So that was like, this doesn't just apply to Final Fantasy 16. This is like my entire use of JRPGs entirely. It goes against usually how I like to play games.
Yeah.
And they usually make it hard to do.
Yeah, because you're literally gimping yourself for not using them. So
I just didn't learn their lesson that they wanted me to learn, I guess.
And what makes it interesting when I started reading more about this is that every party member you have in this game is tied to a summon, to a different summon.
That's cool.
That's why they were emphasizing the different ones as they were showing. And when I got to see this in even higher resolution than just the stream that I saw it and getting to see like more breakdowns, I was more impressed with 16 than I was originally when I saw that stream, when we were just stuck, because you were so caught up on the UI, and then I was trying to see like, is it really as bad as he's saying he is? And I wasn't really paying attention. But this was one of the cases where the more you saw that game on stills and getting to rewatch it, you really see that it was better than your initial reaction was.
I do hope that like at least they can make the UI smaller or something, because it still felt like there was a lot in front of me that was blocking me from seeing the game.
Watch that thing on a big screen and you're gonna see that
maybe so.
It's not because in a small window I can see why it may look cluttered, because you're seeing everything more together.
I also didn't watch it at full screen.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I fixed that for this stream because I knew better.
Exactly.
But yeah, so I am admitting and eating crow somewhat for the fact that the reason I watched that, I was saying some mean things about it. But I am curious to see like this very different direction for the series.
Not quite different reaction, but going back to a style, fantasy style, an actual fantasy style.
Yeah. Like a true fantasy style. I mean, it does look very Final Fantasy 14, but rated M kind of vibe to it.
By the same director from 14, by the same director from 14. The composer from 14 that people swear by, that is like when people get to listen to some music that he's done compared to like the things he's done for 14, that people are going to lose their minds. At least that's what Skill Up said.
I've heard 14's music goes off.
And I think they did one that they combined the Nier Automata music with live Final Fantasy music in one like expansion they did with 14. So, and we still have a ways to go. Because this game's coming out in summer 2023, which someone made the joke is like, this would have been the equivalent of them saying it's coming in in November and it's slipping. So it's like, at least we know, and it's coming for next year. And with that, that was a State of Play and Summer Game Fest, Paul, and we will reconvene. And I'll say that I'm more excited than ever for the Xbox showcase, because I know that the first party showcases are usually, they know how to put a show at least. And the Xbox one, I just want to see, because again, we mentioned in the show, at least maybe Xbox is not delivering on time like they should, considering all they have, but they always like fighting. They always like at least showing that they really want your attention. So I really want to see how they
have some exclusives behind. Hey, you want me to tell you something really cursed?
Yeah.
The reason God of War didn't show up is because they bought the exclusivity and it's going to go to Xbox.
that would be fun if that would be believable if the studio wasn't called Sony Santa Monica.
Yeah. Oh man, that would be nuts. But yeah, in the true side of it, overall, I feel like we could have gone a lot worse out of both of these. This is not bad by any stretch of the imagination.
But it's just so funny that I feel so much more happy about the State of Play than I did the Summer Game Fest. That's a twist that I wasn't expecting.
I would say overall I'm still holding to the Summer Game Fest, just because it has that specific brand of some of the things I liked, and it has a lot more of those things.
And State of Play has the things I liked, all packed together in 30 minutes instead of a 2-hour show.
I think if the Callisto Protocol had the gameplay from the Summer Games Fest, it might pull it out for me. But I mean, they had some really strong stuff for the State of Play. This all sorts of genres and everything.
I would say that the State of Play would have been like even more like high tier if the Last of Us stuff had been saved for this, but they put it in the Summer Game Fest because it blasts farther, and also because you never know if a State of Play is gonna hit. Now State of Play is cursed because now we know what a really good one is. Yeah. So whenever they go back to the old crappy ones, it's going to hurt more. So
everybody's, I mean, I don't think they're going to be able to get away with it. Everyone's going to say like, all right, guys, you got to step a game up. Like, what's the deal? And I mean, eventually people are just going to stop watching them. I mean, that's what happened to the last one. Nobody watched this one because we weren't sure if we were going to watch it. So I can only imagine all these other people that were.
Yeah, but the last one we saw was like, it was like the Square Enix showcase almost with all the random games.
It's justifiable. That's what I mean. Like, Sony just needs to put out better quality State of Plays so that people are going to watch them.
Yeah, and I think it's like they cursed themselves by also doing the PlayStation Showcase, the one that's not like a State of Play that looks different,
which is actually better.
Exactly, they show what those showcases are, so I think that's what puts State of Play in a really awkward position. So let's see if in September we get another showcases of those, because Sony's not going to do another one. They just did a State of Play, but overall, like, State of Play better than I was expecting. Summer Game Fest was fine. At least it could have been worse. I know if you see the chat, Zach tuned out 30 minutes in. So
I saw that.
Okay, so that's how we know that it's like they didn't pace that thing well. So
yeah, a lot of people were really slamming it, honestly, which I'm kind of shocked about, because I feel like it wasn't that bad.
No, it wasn't that bad. It was just that the big bomb is something that leaked beforehand. So
yeah.
You're sometimes defined by your big bombs, and the State of Play one had a better one to end on. But yeah, that will do it for the show, Paul. So where can people find you?
As always, y'all can find me at Dork of Art on Twitter and just about nowhere else currently. Where can they find you?
They can find me at _Josegovia on Twitter, Alejandro_Segovia93 on Instagram, and my written content at thecriticalcorner.com. Once all the E3 stuff is done, I might, all this summer stuff is done, I might write something there. So Paul, it's been a pleasure doing this reacts. Hopefully things line up on Sunday so you can join the reacts halfway through. If not, we'll do the Tuesday one together, and I'll do the one solo.
So, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right, Paul. So everyone that listened to the show, I want to thank you so much to listen to this recap. And remember, we are going to be posting. Paul and I are debating right now if we're going to move the dates based on some recent developments in his side. So as of right now, the show's still on Wednesday, but it may move in a different time. But thank you all. And if you like this, give a share, subscribe, and press X.
Play. Good night, everybody.
See you guys later, and say goodbye to Sonic up there.
Bye, Sonic.